Okay, so let's get started. First of all, hello everyone and welcome, and thank you for joining this informational webinar for phase one of the Advanced Cybersecurity Technology Prize, which we call Act 1. My name is Gunnar Tandy, and I'm a prize lead for the National Renewable Energy Lab here in beautiful Golden, Colorado. We're also known as NREL. And I'm joined today by Cynthia Sue and Fania Barwick. Cynthia is the Cybersecurity Program Manager for DOE CSER's RMUC program, which she will introduce you to in just a few moments. And Fania is the Implementation Manager for the RMUC program. And Cynthia and Fania and I and our respective organizations, we're partnering on this prize. And it is our goal today, which we are going to accomplish, to provide you with all the information you need to successfully complete a submission and compete for this prize. And we're going to do it under an hour. So we aim to achieve this by reviewing this agenda. So Cynthia is going to lead us off with an overview of the RMUC program. And then Fania is going to give us an overview of the prize program. I will briefly introduce you to the American-made program. And then we're going to get into the heart of today's presentation, which is to walk through the individual elements of your submission package, what is required. We're also going to explain how your submission package is going to be scored, how you will apply on the HeroX Prize platform, which is the platform we're using to support this prize, and we'll wrap up with next steps. But first, just a few housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, and we're going to make it available to you and others on the HeroX platform. We do welcome your questions. We ask that you type your questions in the Q&A box. It's on the right-hand side of your screen next to the chat box. And we're going to post responses to your questions on the HeroX platform. We're using the Zoom platform for today's webinar, and by default, the presentation screen shows up in a full screen. So if you want to see your Zoom window, just hit the escape key. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, I encourage you to check your audio settings under the audio tab. You can also direct message the host if you need some help. And we've also included a phone number in the meeting invite should you need to dial in order to follow along. Okay, well, we're going to get started here, and Cynthia is going to provide us with an overview of the RMUC program. Cynthia?
Great, thanks, Gunnar. I know some of you have heard me talk, so hopefully I won't be repeating too much. I'm Cynthia Sue. I'm the Cybersecurity Program Manager for RMUC, and Fania's here with me, the Implementation Manager, and we're really excited to launch this prize. So for those of you who don't know the CSER mission, so this is Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response. This is one of the offices inside DOE. Not only are we responsible for cyber, but we also look at all risks to the energy systems. So the climate risks, physical, EMP, GMD, supply chain risks, and we serve it as the emergency support function. So when there is a disaster of some large effort that affects the energy sector, it's our team, it's a CSER, part of the CSER mission to be the ones responding on behalf of the federal government in response. So our mission's really broad, but within that, CSER was awarded bill funding. So this is RMUC funding, the Rural and Municipal Utilities Cybersecurity Program. It's an abbreviation of the actual bill name, which is Rural and Municipal Utility Advanced Cybersecurity Grant and Technical Assistance Program, which is a little bit of a mouthful. So RMUC is a little bit easier to say. It's $250 million over 5 years. And the objectives are to deploy cybersecurity technology, operational capability, or services that enhance the security posture of utilities through improvements in their ability to protect, detect, respond, recover from a cybersecurity threat. Now, the advantage of the way the language was written is it's not just about deploying technologies. It's also wrapping the whole system around it, the process, the training, the services, and the capacity building. So our goal is to provide all of that through this program. And then the second objective is to increase the participation of eligible entities in cybersecurity threat information sharing. So who are the eligible entities? They are rural electric cooperatives. If you're an electric cooperative, you're eligible. Public power, electric public power utilities. So if you're an electric public power utility, you're eligible. Then there are not-for-profits that are in partnership with those co-ops and municipal utilities. So you think of APPA or NRECA as classical examples of not-for-profits. And then the investor-owned utilities that are really small, that sell less than 4 million megawatt hours per year. So that's who's eligible. There are also some priorities that we're asked to follow. So priority is given to those RMUC eligible utilities that have limited cybersecurity resources, those that own assets critical to the reliability of the bulk power system, and those that own defense critical electric infrastructure. Now, for various reasons, the DCEI ones we want to keep anonymous. So in general, this last criteria of priority we'll call utilities that serve military installations, because it's important that that list of DCEI are anonymous, and there are many other utilities serving military installations that are not DCEI. So with that, we asked last fall for input in designing this program. We wanted to know what was important to you. We did a bunch of listening sessions and we held requests for information. And I just wanted to share some of the themes that came back so that you know what we considered when we designed this prize. So in terms of resources, the request for direct financial support. So we want funding, we need funding. And we also need direct, indirect support from partners that can help us. And access to third-party subject matter experts was really high. So these were 3 of the resource limitations that were raised. In terms of workforce, a lot of requests for upskilling existing staff. How do we get our existing staff to improve their abilities to manage, to select, to run the technologies that we choose, to set up processes and procedures and protocols that improve the security inside our utility? And how do we get access to training so that we can upskill our staff? In terms of technology and tools, the greatest barriers that were identified were the cost of these tools and the workforce, specifically the issue that a lot of the cybersecurity tools that are available in the market require a highly trained, dedicated staff. And for utilities with limited cybersecurity resources, they don't have that dedicated cybersecurity staff. They may or may not be able to actually manage a lot of the tools that could be beneficial to them because of those staff resources. Or in some cases, if they wanted to hire a managed security service provider, the cost of that MSSP, that security service provider, was so high that they couldn't afford it. So all of those things fed into what we were trying to develop. And then we heard a lot about what it's like to work with the federal government. How do you actually access funding from the federal government? So our goal was to seek a lot of input early on so that we could design a program that actually met your needs. I usually say that we have $250 million and we'll spend that money, but whether we spend that money in a way that's useful to you depends on how good we are at understanding what your needs are. And that requires you guys to tell us what you need. And you did that really well this fall. And the goal is to use a variety of financial assistance mechanisms, different mechanisms, because people can participate in different ways with the federal government. And then in terms of cost, whenever we could provide a cost share reduction or no cost share, that was very preferred. And then how do we partner with these not-for-profit partners that you guys really trust? And in terms of actually doing it, can you use a template? Can we do short applications? A general funding opportunity announcement can be quite long. So are there other ways to access funding that are shorter application methods? And can you write it so it's not in legalese in a way that we can understand it who aren't used to working with federal government? Keep the application periods open for longer than 30 days. Host webinars like this to provide educational opportunities to improve your success at being able to compete for this funding. And then providing FAQs and other resources. So we took all of that into consideration, and our first thing out of the gate is this prize. The goal of this prize is to empower all of you to do critical investments in your staff, in your processes, and in your technologies to harden systems against threats. So Mariah just put the link in the chat for the prize. And so hopefully we want your feedback. Did we succeed? We heard what your needs were. We heard what your challenges were. This is the first thing out of the gate is this prize. And as we go through this process, we're going to want feedback from you. Did this work? Did this hit the mark? So with that, I'm going to pass it to Fania, and she's going to talk more about what the prize actually is.
Thank you, Cynthia. I am excited to speak with you about this prize series, which Cynthia alluded to, is the first in what we hope will be a series of prizes where we can give you all the opportunity to compete, and we can collect your feedback to hopefully make improvements in the next consecutive rounds. Additionally, as Cynthia explained, the goal of RMUC is not to improve the cybersecurity of just a few of you. We want to touch as many utilities with this funding as we can in the most meaningful way that we can, providing wraparound support in addition to the cash. So providing technical assistance in addition to the cash prizes here. So the Act 1 prize is the first intended to incentivize and reward actions taken by your utilities to improve your cybersecurity, including investments in people, process, and technology, not just technology. The prize amount is just under $9 million with a mix of cash awards and technical assistance vouchers. As Cynthia alluded to, our intention was to give you an opportunity to compete for funding with minimal administrative burden. The great thing about prizes, which Gunnar will get into a little bit later, is once the funds are distributed, there is no reporting associated with those funds. This prize is intended to prioritize utilities with limited cybersecurity resources and utilities serving military installations. That's our military track. We are very excited to get this prize out the door and get your feedback so that we can keep the prize going, hopefully in the future. So this prize is structured with 3 increasingly competitive phases, each phase concluding with a prize. In order to compete in subsequent phases, you have to be considered a winner of the previous phase. So what that means is that if you want to participate, you should apply to the first phase, whether you think that your cybersecurity maturity level falls in the very early phase or a more advanced phase. So in the commitment phase, you are demonstrating your need for this funding and your organizational commitment to participate in the prize and to improve your cybersecurity, considering people, process, and technology. In the planning phase, you're going to be assessing systems, conducting gap analysis, prioritizing risks, and drafting a roadmap to implement solutions to those risks. Also considering which solutions might be best suited for your organization and the skills and capacity of your staff. Finally, in the third phase, you're developing further and implementing the roadmap for your selected solutions, competing at the end of each phase for the prizes. So a little more detail about the prizes for each phase. The first phase, commitment, will have up to 55 winners, each receiving $50,000 in cash prizes and either 60 hours of technical assistance or 120 hours of technical assistance for the military track. The second phase will include an additional $50,000 cash prize and an additional 60 hours of technical assistance or 120 hours of technical assistance. And we anticipate up to 30 winners for the planning phase. Finally, the winners of the third phase, the implementation phase, will walk away with $100,000 cash prizes each for up to 30 winners. So the total potential cumulative award, if you are successful in winning all 3 phases, would be $200,000 and 120 hours of technical assistance or 240 hours of technical assistance. So let's talk about the timelines. As I mentioned, the prizes are awarded at the end of each phase. So right now, we are in the commitment phase. You're using this time to come up with an application that describes your need, your goals, your service territory, and demonstrates your organizational commitment. So the current commitment phase is open with applications due no later than November 29th. Winners will be announced in March. And when those winners are announced, the second phase, the planning phase, begins. During that planning phase, as I mentioned, you're identifying risks, prioritizing solutions, drafting your roadmap. Those submissions are going to be due in August of next year, with winners announced shortly after, ideally in October. And then finally, the third phase will open, the implementation phase, with winners being announced in March of 2025. So as you can see, this is progressive. The work being done here is progressive as well. And we are very excited to be moving forward in this direction. I'm going to pass this back to Gunnar to talk about the details of the prize and the prize mechanism itself so that you have everything you need in order to apply.
If I can come off mute. Okay, thank you, Fania, and thank you, Cynthia, so much. Appreciate it. So just a quick overview of, we talk about American Made. So what is it? What is it all about? Just one slide here. This American Made Challenges program represents over 21 technology offices within U.S. Department of Energy. The foundation of this program really are these prizes like this one that we facilitate. We also create partnerships between entrepreneurs and the private sector and connect them with experts across all of our DOE national labs. And we'll talk about on the next slide just how these prizes move at a faster clip than grants. So thanks to these rapid timelines and goals, our teams and competitors often accomplish in months what would normally take years. When we talk about prizes, a lot of people ask the first question is, what is the difference between a grant and a prize? And the short answer really is that prizes move faster than grants. They really accelerate the innovation process, and impacts are delivered faster, and teams start competing immediately. So on the left side of the screen, this is a typical grant process, which starts with writing and submitting concept papers. They're reviewed, then full applications are submitted, they're reviewed, then the projects are finally selected and negotiated, and then the teams start performing. And then they're going to submit reimbursement requests. And those reimbursements, once dispersed, often come with performance requirements. As Fania mentioned, with prizes, there are no restrictions on how those funds are being used. So a typical prize award process starts with participants beginning their work and performing immediately. There's a predefined goal, which we'll talk about. The goals are for each of the phases of this prize in just a moment. The participants then submit their package. The expert judges score those submissions, and then winners are selected and they receive payment. And that payment has no restriction of performance requirements. So, in this prize, I think we hope that utilities will use the funds to advance their cybersecurity posture. It's really up to the teams to determine how best to use those funds. And the funds are dispersed quickly. And often these prizes come with vouchers or technical assistance, including this one, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Before we get into the individual elements of the submission package, we just want to make sure that you know where to find the prize rules. The link was dropped in the chat earlier. Really want to encourage you to carefully read these prize rules. It includes all the information you need to successfully compete in this prize. And we're going to hit on the highlights today. So Cynthia covered off on this slide a little bit earlier. There are a lot of eligibility requirements, so just make sure that you're familiar with them and make sure that you're eligible for this prize. Each of the phases also includes eligibility requirements. So for this particular phase, the first one, which we call the commitment phase, a single utility may submit only one submission package on behalf of that utility. And the submission package needs to be complete. We're going to go through each of the individual elements. All of those elements are required in order for the submission package to be reviewed by the expert judges and scored. And we are holding two mandatory webinars, this one and another one on October 11th. And competing utilities they're required to participate in each of these two webinars, which we'll talk about again in just a moment. There are also a lot of persons and entities who are not eligible to compete in this prize. So just want to encourage you to reference page 11 and the prize rules and review the requirements carefully to make sure that you're eligible to compete. So this slide contains everything that needs to be addressed within this commitment phase. We talked about the two required webinars that staff need to attend. We'll talk about that again in just a few moments. And then these 6 components of the submission package need to be included and submitted before the deadline on November 29th. We're going to go through each of these individually. The cover page and narrative with a maximum of 3,000 words, a letter of support from your organization's authorizing official. There's a utility profile form. This RMUC Utility Service Territory Report, which we call the USTR. We're going to talk about that in a few moments. Fania mentioned the wraparound services, the technical assistance. There is a request form where you'll identify the TA that you need in this submission package, and then confirmation that you attended the required webinars. So I mentioned all of these components really need to be addressed in order for the submission to be considered complete and to be eligible for judging and winning the prize. So we're going to start off with a cover page and narrative. This number in the upper left-hand corner, 1.3.1, is really intended to help you cross-reference each of these components of the submission package with the section and the rules, which go into this in more detail. It's just for convenience here. So the cover page is going to need to include a commitment prize project title, which track you're applying for, the limited cybersecurity resources or military, your utility name, city, state, and zip code, the primary point of contact, called the POC, for the submission package, and then also needs to include all the names and job titles of the members of your utilities commitment prize team. The narrative needs to address your responses to these questions and statements. Also are really probably one of the most valuable pieces of the submission package. It's worth 90 points. So really want to encourage you to take the time to respond to these thoughtfully. So each of these questions and statement needs to be addressed in the narrative, and we have a template for it, which I'll address on the next slide. So need to address the utility need and cybersecurity maturity level, the initial goals and expected outcomes and impacts on the utility, the commitment to implement cybersecurity improvements and capacity to utilize technical assistance. We know that it's going to require some resources and capacity and from your team, and then a description of the service territory and community benefits. So I mentioned that we created several templates to support your submission. They can be found on the resources tab of the HeroX platform. The links are right here on the screen under phase 1 commitment application templates. When you click on that, you'll see the rest of the links to the templates here. And the first one here is the commitment narrative and template. And it looks like this. There's helpful text in the brackets to help guide your responses to these questions. Encourage you to read it and then delete that section and enter your responses and then attach it to your submission package. Okay. This cover page and narrative will need to be uploaded to HeroX as a PDF file. All of the attachments need to be in a PDF format except one file, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is in Excel. Okay. Next is a letter of support. So you'll want a 1-page letter of support, intent and commitment signed by the utility's authorizing official. It needs to state that the official supports the utility submission package and should recognize that competing in this prize is going to require ongoing commitment of staff time and resources, and that the official supports that. This letter is going to be considered by prize reviewers, and it's going to count in your submission package. Please don't enter multi-page letters, and really just looking for one letter of support here. Multiple letters are not going to give you any additional points. So this letter will also need to be uploaded to your submission package as a PDF file. And we do have a template for it found on the resources tab of the HeroX platform. And it looks like this, again, with helpful information in the brackets. Next up is the utility profile form. So this form will need to provide information about your utility, your service territory, and the information about your utility's access to cybersecurity training, resources, and consulting services. This information can also support the responses to your narrative in the other section of the submission package, and it will be used by prize reviewers in evaluation of your submission package. If you win a commitment prize and you compete for phase 2, just want to call out that your TA provider is going to be required to verify all of the information that you provided in this utility profile form as part of your submission package. There are several tools that are publicly available that we want to encourage you to use as you pull this together. The links for each of these tools can be found in the prize rules. And one of the tools here is the RMUC USTR report, which we're going to talk about how you can request that in just a moment. That's going to include basic information about your communities and your utility service territory. So this utility profile form is the one exception to the rule of PDF for everything that you attach. This is going to be the Excel file. We do have a template for this, and again, it can be found on the resources tab of the HeroX platform, and it looks like this. So let's talk about this RMUC Utility Service Territory Report, which we'll call the USTR for short. This is going to be available to you after today's webinar. On the next slide, I'm going to explain how you can request it. This is really important because this report will include an estimated map of your service territory, the number of disadvantaged community census tracts in your service territory, and other information that's going to be really helpful in completing your submission package and the narrative responses. You can only request this report via the link I'm going to share with you in just a moment. It's not going to be on the HeroX page. If you're provided with this USTR report, you are required to include that in your submission package. So attach it to the submission. If for some reason, if this USTR report is not available to your utility, you'll want to upload a document that lists the sources of information your utility used to complete the utility profile form and narrative. And this USTR report can be attached to HeroX as a PDF file. Okay. So Mariah is going to drop this link in the chat. This is a link to a Microsoft form where you want to enter some basic information, first name, last name, email address, etc. But also you'll need to include your utility name and utility number from the EIA 861 report. I'm not expecting you to know exactly what this is. So what we did is we uploaded this EIA 861 report to the resources tab of HeroX under that same title. It's a spreadsheet. So I encourage you to go into that Excel spreadsheet, find your utility, and copy and paste the name and utility number from this report into this form. And then our prize team will send a report to the requester. This is really important because we want to make sure you get the right report for your submission package. We can't just go off names. You know, there are a lot of different utilities with Tri-County or Tri-State in their names, a lot of utilities with Cold Springs in their name. So this number will allow us to match it with the proper report and send that off to you. And then in the second webinar on October 11th, we're gonna walk through what's contained in that report and how it can be useful to you. Okay. Next up is the technical assistance form. So this form is not going to be included and scored by the prize reviewers, but it's going to allow you to select topics that can benefit your utility should you win the commitment phase and move on to the planning phase. This commitment prize, so this form is going to be used to assess your utility's needs and identify appropriate TA providers. So we're going to match you with the right TA provider, and that's going to be largely based on what you identify as your needs, so that you can work with that TA provider in the planning phase. If you don't see any options listed on the first page of the TA request form that you need to compete in the planning phase, you can select items on page 2 of the TA request form. And this TA request form will also need to be uploaded as a PDF file. And we do have a template for this as well, found on the resources tab of HeroX, and it looks like this. So really want to encourage you to review this TA request form, and then in the upper left-hand corner, include your project title, organization name, and then select just through the checkboxes the items that apply to you and your utility. And then the final component of your submission is confirmation that you participated in this webinar and the October 11th webinar. And the way to do this is your utility's primary point of contact is going to need to confirm the registration and attendance of the staff from your utility that attended these 2 webinars. It doesn't have to be the same person. It can be 2 different people. And how the POC will do this is they'll submit the confirmation letter needs to be addressed to the prize administrator, stating the name, title, and email for each person from the utility that completed the webinars. Include the date of the webinars that they were completed and the utility's name and address, and the POC will need to sign this letter. We did include the link for the second webinar here. It's already in the chat and we've referenced it a couple of times already. And this confirmation letter will need to be uploaded to HeroX as a PDF file. So those are all the components of the submission package. So next, we're going to talk about how we're going to score this. So we're anticipating, a fair number of submissions. So we're going to leverage an army of expert reviewers, and they're going to score these submissions by using this information to score the submissions, which is the narrative, the letter of support from the utility's authorizing official, the utility profile form, and we talked about this RMUC USTR report. So after reviewing all of these items, the reviewers are going to use this point scale down below, with 1 point for strongly disagree, all the way up to 6 points for strongly agree. And the point total will be, for each submission package, will be summed up and equal the scores for each of the bulleted statements. The final determination for winners is by the US DOE prize judge, and that prize judge is going to consider the reviewer's feedback and the scores, as well as your utility submission package and program policy factors that are included in Section 4 of the prize rules. I'm not going to go through all those today, but just really want to encourage you to reference page 37 of the prize rules to review the full list of program policy factors, since they are part of the scoring for these submissions. So now that we know how it's going to be scored, let's talk about and conclude this webinar with an overview of how you pull up your submission form and submit it through the HeroX platform. So we shared this HeroX link earlier. It's herox.com/ACT1 prize. I encourage you to go to that website right now if you haven't been there already, or right after this webinar, and start the process. You can either start it by clicking on follow, which is the link in the upper right-hand corner of the landing page, or solve this challenge, which is down at the bottom of the page. And then you'll want to review and accept the competitor agreement, and then determine if you want to join this prize either by creating your own team and inviting other members of your utility to join you, or to join a team that's already been created, or to compete individually. And then the final step really here is to click on begin entry at the bottom of the next page, and make sure that you submit your package by 5 p.m. Eastern on November 29th. It's going to pull up a form that looks a bit like this. Just want to call out that at the top of the form, so we don't cause any confusion, by default, it's going to ask for your idea in the title, So rather than idea, please enter your project title from your submission package in the submission package cover page in this title box here. And then it does request an image. I just want to call out that this including an image is really optional for your submission package. It's not required. All right, so in terms of next steps, just to wrap up here, follow the challenge from the HeroX Prize platform, read the rules on the resources tab of HeroX, and start your submission package today. November 29th is going to be here before we know it. So I really want to encourage you to get started on your submission package and make sure that it's completed by 5 p.m. Eastern on November 29th, 2023. And if you have any questions along the way, please send them to act.prizes, plural, @nrel.gov. That email address is also on the landing page of HeroX if you have any questions. And we're posting FAQs to the FAQs section of HeroX. So as we receive questions and we think they'll be helpful to other teams, we'll continue to post them and build them out here. And this concludes our webinar today. So on behalf of Cynthia and Fania and our prize team, we really look forward to reviewing your submission package, and we thank you for joining us today. So,
And Gunnar, can I just add that for those of you who are submitting questions, we won't be answering the questions in this webinar. We'll be answering them and posting them to the HeroX platform. So
that's right. So we do have some questions in the Q&A already, which is great. Please keep them coming, and we will accumulate our responses and post them onto the HeroX website, probably in the FAQ section. Thank you, John, Cynthia. Appreciate you for calling that out. Any other comments, or are we ready to wrap up? Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and goodbye.